Today I'm walking around Monte, Ecuador, discussing why I chose Ecuador and answering some of the common questions that I have received since posting my first video. I chose Ecuador because long-term visas were not available options in the Southeast Asian countries that I had originally selected to move to. Ecuador offered the easiest long-term stable visa that I could obtain given the changes that resulted from the world situation. Ecuador was presented as being cheap and safe with affordable housing. Ecuador looked like it offered weather that I would enjoy and food that was easy to adjust to coming from the United States. I also felt that I had more Spanish knowledge than I did, which made me feel like I could navigate day-to-day conversations easier. When I moved to Ecuador, I chose only to keep items that were essential to my first few days or items that I could not live without or replace after arriving at my destination. I felt that keeping a storage unit in the US was unnecessary and added another headache for me to try to manage abroad. As a result, I arrived in Ecuador with one suitcase and a backpack. I made sure to bring a nice laptop and cell phone as electronics in Ecuador tend to be expensive. I completed the visa process while still in the United States and did not depart for Ecuador until I had secured my temporary residency visa. There are multiple apostille documents that will be required in order to secure the visa. These documents could have been obtained while I was in Ecuador, but the added stress, expense, and time that would have been incurred was enough to convince me to complete the process at home before leaving. Ecuador has many visa options for temporary residency, which was one of the primary reasons why I chose Ecuador as a landing spot. Many aspiring expats aren't aware of how difficult it can be to obtain a long-term visa and often assume that they can just move to wherever they desire. Ecuador makes it relatively easy for those who desire to move long-term, much easier than some of the other popular destinations. Before leaving the United States, I made sure to establish a virtual mailbox so that I could continue to receive important correspondence. Be aware that certain entities, including financial institutions, don't recognize virtual mailbox addresses as a physical address. As a result, there could be issues with using a virtual mailbox for banks and other services. I also established a Google Voice account prior to leaving so that I could maintain a US phone number. Please be aware that some entities will not allow a Google Voice number to be used for two-factor authentication, so this could cause issues for you when logging into certain websites. Google also reserves the right to close your Voice account for anything that they perceive to be a violation of their policies and has no obligation to restore it, so be aware that this could potentially happen as well. I've read several stories online of people losing their accounts. While we are on the subject of online, make sure you establish a Facebook account if you do not already have one. I'm personally not a fan of Facebook, but there are several expat groups for Ecuador that will be good resources for asking questions and finding out about upcoming events and activities. Upon arriving in Ecuador, I leveraged Airbnb for temporary accommodation so that I could get a feel for the area and the city prior to making any long-term commitments. There is typically a big discount for most hosts for 30-day and longer rentals on Airbnb, so I tried to book 30 days at a minimum in order to save money. Unfortunately, this also meant that I was stuck in some of the crappier Airbnbs for an entire month. I wish I had a better strategy to recommend. It wasn't easy for me to find cheap and safe temporary accommodations. Please note that I am a budget traveler, so many of the tips and suggestions that I have are from a money-saving perspective. I'm not the kind of guy that is okay spending $10 for a hamburger in a country that I can buy a complete meal with a drink for $3. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments.